Thank you. Lightning strikes the earth approximately 6,000 times per minute. If a polar bear and a grizzly mate, the hybrid cub is called a pizzly. In just 10 minutes, a hurricane unleashes as much force as if all the world's nuclear weapons were detonated at once. Maybe you knew all of this. I didn't. But I've just broken a cardinal rule, haven't I? I've admitted I didn't know something, and I've admitted it publicly. Let me back up. Duh, you didn't know that? Because that's what we say, isn't it? To cover the fact that we ourselves don't know. Just this last week on campus, one of my students told me that he was sitting in a lecture, he was listening and taking notes avidly, and his mind drifted, and the student next to him said, what did he say? I missed that. And he said, oh, sorry, my mind drifted. And the student sitting next to him said, well, you don't know that? And my student said, well, you don't either. You're the one that asked me. Why are you making fun of me? Why are you making it seem like I'm the dumb one, right? And yet we do that, don't we, to cover our own ignorance. From the drive-thru at McDonald's to the halls of the Ivy Leagues, we bluster, we bluff, we posture, we puff out our chests, and we pretend that we know everything. And if you think that you're exempt, think of the last time that you were standing with a group of friends, and they were all talking about a movie, The Greatest Showman maybe. They were all talking about the movie, and you haven't seen it. You're standing there with them, and you want to be part of it. You might be Googling out the side trying to see what it's about, so you have something to contribute to the conversation. If you don't do that, you might, when the punchline comes, but you didn't see it. Why do we do that? Russian author Anton Chekhov says that only fools and charlatans know everything and understand nothing. Are we nothing more than fools and phonies who know nothing? I know that I don't. I don't know anything. I'm 54 years old, and I'm a child in this universe. When my mother was 13 years old, she was gang raped. Consequently, she dropped out of school, and by the time she was 21, she had had 6 children from 3 different fathers. 4 of us survived. With a 7th grade education and being a child herself, with no education, she took any job she could get. She was a nightclub dancer. She was a waitress. She would scrape food off of patrons' plates to bring home to us. I was that kid that didn't know anything because by the time I quit school when I was 15, we had moved more than 50 times. You could say there were a few gaps in my education. I was the kid that when I heard about Romeo and Juliet, I thought they were kids in our trailer park. No idea what they were talking about. Yep, I was the kid that when I heard about the Sistine Chapel, said, well, do I have to learn about the other 15 to understand the Sistine? I was that kid. I didn't know you were supposed to change your sheets because you don't use sheets when you're living in a car or sleeping on the floor. You don't need them. I was that kid, and I want you to know that I tried so hard to fake it. But some chasms are so wide and so deep that it becomes impossible to maintain the facade. And yet we try, don't we? We try. But see, I thought I was the only one with that sense of fraudulence in my stomach. And then I learned that you all have it too. We all have it. We're afraid of being found out. And why are we afraid? Because it's the anthropological equivalent of being cast away from the fire, right? No mammoth leg for you tonight. We're not going to tell you where the cave is. You have no shelter now. We're not going to tell you where the watering hole is. You are now ostracized from society, clearly not sufficient to sit at the fire. It's a possible death sentence. So we fake it. And we fake it till we make it. Isn't that our national motto? Fake it till you make it? But I want to offer no one's making it. We're just still faking it. We're just still carrying on the facade Baseball, apple pie, and duh, you didn't know that. Think about that. It's tragic. And why do we do it? Because we want the illusion of security. Because knowing something feels good, doesn't it? It feels good. Even the smartest person in the world knows this much compared to what there is to know. Even the smartest person in the world. Knowledge has a half-life. I just learned, oh wait, I can't tell you I just learned it, can I? Duh, you didn't know that? I didn't either, I just learned it. It was exciting. Knowledge has a half-life, just like a can of green beans in your pantry has a shelf life, knowledge has a half-life. And in academic subjects, physics has one of the longest half-lives. Yeah, 7 years. Now I teach basic writing, and as part of that course, I before E except after C. Yeah, that was great 40 years ago. It applies to 35 words. There are more than 900 words now that don't fit the rule. No wonder my students are confused when they walk in the door, right? They're confused. They have no idea what's going on. It took me 30 years to get my bachelor's degree. And with the encouragement of my children, I went back and finished. I was terrified to enter the halls of education, the hallowed halls. My daughter actually went with me to the admin building, and she was holding my hand behind the counter. I was just shaking, terrified. And yet, I still know so little. I have some papers on the wall, yet there's still so much yet to know. One of my final classes was an ethics class. And in this ethics class, I took a yellow pad of paper and a pen, and every time he said a word I didn't know, I wrote it down. And then I'd go home and I'd spend hours looking them up. I'd never heard of tautology or bifurcate or epistemology, so I wrote them phonetically. I want you to know, it's incredible, isn't it? I want you to know that if you type that into Google, it'll take you to the right place. That's impressive to me. So knowledge, epistemology is the study of knowledge, what we know, what we don't, what we believe, and how we formulate those beliefs, and why we fake it. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Why we fake it. I was in a classroom last week, and I happened to mention to my students that I'd never seen Napoleon Dynamite. I know. No mammoth leg for me tonight. I know. And I thought they were going to fall out of their chairs. And they said, you haven't, wait, what? And I said, isn't it crazy? And yet here I am. It's just crazy how this world works. And I said, the funny part is, if you want to stand on the shoulders of giants, you've got to get out of the shadows off of that 1-inch platform where you're looking down at the rest of the world and judging them. Couldn't I stand up here as an English major and say, you've never seen Voltaire? Isn't that ridiculous with how much there is to know? Wouldn't that be ridiculous and silly? The Greek philosopher Epictetus tells us that we cannot begin to learn what we think we already know. So we have to admit our ignorance. And I know that some of you are out there saying, you don't know my job. If I do that, it's a death sentence. I'm not suggesting in your next business meeting when you're asked a question that you say, I don't know. I want you to keep your job. I'm suggesting that you give a truly intelligent response. You know, I'm not familiar with that. Could you tell me more? Let me look into that. Intelligent responses that we can admit our vulnerability. And that opens the door for all of us to stand side by side and say, it's exciting, let's learn. What do you want to learn? Now I know what you're thinking, what you think the word learn means. I asked some of my students, what does it mean to truly learn? And without hesitation, she raised her hand and she said, show up, sit up, shut up, and learn. And my heart ached. Because if you think about it in kindergarten, you walk in and ask a class question, what do? And And then you call on one of them, I don't know, I just want to raise my hand. I was so excited, right? And by the time we get to 4th to 6th grade, we're offering them points. We're offering them treats. We're bribing them. Raise your hands, raise your hands. You can raise your hands. And by the time we get to junior high and high school, Bueller, anyone? We've beaten the questions right out of them. And we've done it with, you didn't know that? But that's just one end of the knowledge spectrum. On the other end, my daughter was in 5th grade, and she was on a 12th grade reading level. And she was in there, and she raised her hand, and she asked a question. And the kid behind her said, the smart girl doesn't know everything. And she came home. I didn't know about the experience. She walked in the door. I could see her crestfallen face. I said, honey, what happened? And words that just strike a mother's heart. I'm never going to ask another question. That's what we're doing. And we're doing it from our boardrooms, to our classrooms, to our family rooms. And the ridiculous part is we're all little peacocks, because in the whole universe, we hardly know anything. This is my granddaughter, Adelaide. You can ooh and ah. No, really. You can ooh and ah. Thank you. That feels good. How many of you have seen a baby learn to walk, a toddler? Yep. Okay. Yeah. What happens? They fall. We all say it collectively. They fall. And what do? They get back up. Don't forget that they have that saggy diaper, that landing cushion, and kind of built in. It's kind of nice. I kind of wish I had that once in a while when I fall. This was taken just before Adelaide learned how to walk. All the adults were in the front room. She was holding on to the corner of the coffee table. Her little legs were going back and forth, and we were all just like, we're going to solve the national debt tonight, okay? We're just right there. And she's wobbling, and she takes that step, and she fell. And I said, that child is so stupid, she'll never amount to anything. I said that in a classroom once, and a 6-foot tall, big, buff, at-risk teenager in the back flew out of his chair, knocked it on the floor, and he goes, "Ma'am, that's messed up." And I said, it is messed up. And I didn't say that. Why? Why would I not say that? Because she doesn't know. She's just learning. So I ask you now, at what age does it become acceptable to say, duh, you didn't know that, or you're stupid? At what age? Are we not all infants here? If you think back to the playground days, do you remember some of the phrases we heard? Nuh-uh. I know you are, but what am I? And duh, you didn't know that. Of interest, the first two, somehow we shed those skins before we're fully grown adults, hopefully, right? And you've never seen Oprah turn to a guest and say, I know you are, but what am I? You've never seen that. Hopefully you never will. And you've never seen someone, even the newscast, sometimes they get kind of crazy with their vitriol slinging back and forth, but you've never seen one of them say, nuh-uh. And yet, duh, you didn't know that, is still culturally accepted and promoted. And what's the danger? What's the danger of that? Because we never ask questions. And if we don't ask questions, we're not going to discover. And if we're not discovering, there's no innovation. They're all interconnected. What have you wondered lately? I mean, really wondered. I remember wondering why the sky was blue. Air is transparent. So how is the sky blue? And how come I don't see zebras in the pastures around here? How come we don't saddle those and ride those around? And how is it that our political leaders do not understand that we don't want the speechwriters and we don't want the rhetoric? We want someone to just speak straight. I wonder, what do you wonder? Because the questions are what matter most, not the answers. It's asking the questions. That's what matters most. In the last 3 months, Amazon has has released more than 1 million new books. In 3 months. I could spend my whole life reading. I love reading, and I can't read them all in 3 months. There are more stars in the known universe than there are grains of sand on Earth. To date, we've explored less than 5% of the ocean's depths. There's so much we don't know, so much to explore. Please join me. I invite you. I implore you. Please, let's step off of our 1-inch platforms. Let's stand side by side and say, I didn't know that. Will you tell me more? I want to learn, because we are all children in the universe. Thank you.